that will do is that to make liquidity available, directly to consumers of foreign exchange. And you saw with the introduction of that policy at the first auction after the announcement, I think that was last week or was it the week before, the demand was almost $1.2 billion. One auction. Typically in the past, when you had, the Dutch auction running weekly, you would have the week where demand was very high, million thereabouts, being the demanded figure. But as it stands now, of course, there's so much latent demand. You basically saw that heavy volume. So we need more of this from the CBN if we're going to have a stable exchange rate.
Let's talk about the Central Bank of Nigeria's policy measures. So, how do recent policy measures such as licensing new IMTOs and the willing buyer, willing seller model specifically impact remittances in the country?
Well, the IMTO policies are exactly why we're beginning to see, this increases. And, those we've all, I think every watcher of the markets and watchers those measured by CBN, and they have to sustain it and ensure that there's consistency along those lines for long enough for us to continue to see the gains and the benefits of that. We don't want to see any somersaults or any reversals of these policies. However, the willing buyer, willing seller model, like I just said, is potentially problematic. Because what you are saying by signaling to the market is that you will allow the markets determine the value of the currency. That cannot all go well for the well-being of our economy. I understand that the unencumbered portion of our reserves may be rather lean, and that may be why there's a bit of reluctance on the part of the CBN to aggressively and publicly position itself as defending the naira. The capacity may be said not to be there, but that is some serious concerted effort on the part of the government moving away from the CBN new leakages, so that we can protect our currency. So the willing buyer, willing seller thing, I'm not a fan of it at all. I think, just from looking around the world and seeing what other people do, it's just simply not the way to go. You've got to defend your currency when it becomes necessary. We've seen Japan. Japan did that very recently. I think China also did that very recently. Intervene markets to ensure that their currency did not fall below a certain threshold. So I active by a willing seller model would have on the markets, in bringing in exchange capital that the markets are stable and that with this kind of repatriate of their capital, that they will access funds at a rate that is, easy markets, that you are going to leave, your exchange rates to the vagaries of the market. Certain remittances made because people are confident that they can access this money when they need them. So the IMTO policy, fantastic. Willing buyer, willing seller, not so much. I think we've got to be careful with that. We're very moderate and in our messaging with regards to that and the markets.
In what ways policy measures enhance liquidity in Nigeria's foreign exchange market?
The more people believe that the markets are stable and steady and rates are predictable, whatever the exchange rate might be, it needs to be predictable. It could be 1,400, but let it be 1,400. Let the swings and the changes not be wild. Let's not have too much volatility. Let's just make sure that plus or minus 5 naira, 10 naira, we're stable. Then you will see liquidity improve. So again, like I said, if you are signaling the market and you're saying willing buyer, willing seller, you're going to scare investors away and liquidity will be hampered. So stability of policy, consistency of policy are absolutely critical to ensuring that in the short to medium term, you can shore up the liquidity, of the market and ensure that the market is healthy in terms of supply. So again, we can only just appeal that the central bank continues to remain consistent. The policy of intervening in the markets that have just ruined, we must not see a policy in that regard. And you already beginning to regain value. Since that announcement was made, we've seen gain of almost 80 to 100 naira in just a 2-week period. In this pain, so that they can
significant 553 million for Nigeria's economy.
563, 533, let's say $500 million in 1 month. If you multiply that by 10, you're talking 5 billion. So I would say that it's a good development. Diaspora remittances trended at a point, in the past at about $20 billion, which amounts to somewhere $1.5 billion per month. So it's very good news that, the numbers are growing the way they are, where we were last year, a year from now, in the past, a year ago. But we still have for us to achieve, to continue to, move in this trajectory, is to be consistent with the policies that have brought us here. We don't want to see any more policy somersaults. If we continue to see that, if we continue to see consistency, those numbers will pick up. And the only impact that it will have is that it will improve the liquidity of the markets and help the value and help the naira to regain value, which, again, multiplier effects, which will eventually dovetail into inflation and helping reflate the economy and bringing prices and services as we desperately need. So all of this ties into the cost of living crisis that we've been talking about for too long now, So let's ensure that we maintain this so that we can regain value, so that we can begin to see prices of goods
and portfolio investments. What should exert the economy?
Remittances are more. So I will say, if I wanted to rate them, I would say diaspora remittances. Also, they're stable because they're coming from people with a vested interest, emotional ties, who have families down here. So those monies will come. What you want to do is to move, the motivation, the motives for those monies coming into the country, move them away from just, and all of that, and move them into actual economic activity and a quest for return on investment. So diaspora remittances are stable. I would say that they can come in very quickly, and some people will say it's hot money. Those ones will look towards foreign direct investments, which are more long-term in nature. In terms of nearness to cash, I would say remittances, foreign portfolio investors, and the foreign direct investments. Of course, there are a number of other sources of inflows into the country, export proceeds being one, and a lot of the other smaller, grants, loans, and what have you. So all of this put together will consist of the mix of liquidity in the market. So that's why remittances are absolutely critical, because it's a steady base. You've got Nigerians. So, it's the source of that not only consistent, but continues to grow significantly over the next year or two.
Well, how do you think the CBN's efforts to double formal remittances receipts within a year impacts the broader economic landscape of Nigeria?
I think they don't need to double it. I think they need to triple that happen. So they just got to more creative ways of attracting, remittances from our diaspora community. We've got, a potentially very healthy real estate sector. We've got agricultural sector that is desperately in need of high volume funding, from outside the country. There are a lot of opportunities in different sectors of the economy. The CBN working with other arms and organs of the government needs to come up with creative solutions, creative instruments that will attract these remittances, and one that has been recently issued is a good step, but with more this funding.
Well, economist Shokpito, many thanks for lending your thoughts. Well, that's it on this episode of the program.
I've always wanted I could do it.
I got into the field with the idea of being a kind of a Indiana Jones and just kind of, going into all these really exciting sites. So that was a very naive, immature approach to what heritage might actually be.
And we felt that heritage and sustainability are two sides of the same coin. So we decided to join hands and create a larger impact.
Not many architects think that climate change is something that they need to think about, but we're trying to change that. Material has always been used in construction, and it's a very clean material.
This material is truly magical. In India, it's all about customs and traditions. He walked down the machine with lime and camphor burning in his hand. It's like removing all the bad energies or vibes that with. So that's how him is right when he less light. Mixed with kind of mud or soil. So we've got some really particles are kind of taken away, and it's mixed with quarry dust. Is essentially from stone quarries, the waste that you get is collected, and to this mix you add very little bit of water just to activate the clay, which is then put into the machine, and the strength of the brick is basically got from the action of compression. So what essentially you're doing is you're removing all the air particles from the mix and therefore getting a very, very solid block. So the manufacturing and the processing is done by local communities, so that again you're giving back to the livelihoods towards local communities rather than large manufacturing plants and large. That's why this material, although it looks like a very normal block, has a much larger reach and a much more positive impact than. For what reason now you find masons who are mostly male, so the kind of camaraderie you would want to have is a little bit harder to achieve with them, so it's a bit of a social stigma to get too pally with. No madam, you can't touch the tools, you can't get muddy. But then eventually they're like, there's no point talking to her, she's going to touch the tools, she is going to get muddy. So that's one way that we found it's nice to that barrier almost immediately. Then we kind of say who defines roles, right? It's just what you feel like doing, what gives you joy, and working with my create a better relationship with the mason. In the fibers, right? So we add this in of the mud particles. So it's quite young that we get in this stuff that we work with in the villages are quite clear. They're eating last that. Rosie and I go back a very, very long time. We were roommates in college and did our architecture school together. I think when you find someone, you know that you click, and that's what happened with us. There was, friendship was almost like immediate, and then it's lasted us 16 years. We were very clear that when Rosie associates, because the firm needs to be bigger than that.
Anne Joseph, architect. Vasha and John, architect. Tejaswini, architect. Lesha Mahadesha, architect. Sanjani J, architect. Shubha, architect.
And then we thought about the masonry. So it was kind of a no-brainer to give them the importance in the name itself. And so masons and the ink would be basically our drawings and all of that.
We wanted it to be a collaborative, hands-on process on site. So, when we stop just the 2D and 3D, and once it moves off to site, like we barely know what's going on, or we just come in once in a while, but more like working,
just holding it in place, but the notch is doing the bulk of the work. I used to be in Girl Scouts, so I know a thing or two about knots. So we managed to get our poles up. I started like a lot of people, and I think after a while I got disillusioned with that kind of a life. I was thinking about moving to the countryside, setting up something like this. So it was on my mind, and we were thinking about it until, a year and a half ago, I lost my husband, the love of my life. He was my college sweetheart. I know adult life only with him. I don't know any other life. So when he died, city anymore. This place came up. It was almost an impulse buy, and I bought this place. And then I had been talking to the Mason Singh guys. I think it was important for me. They also knew them. They also knew my husband. They understood my journey. They understood where I was started into the design. I'm very proud of it because the only cost we incurred in all of this was the metal mesh. The rest was broken bricks. These are broken tiles. So it was all fiber or in this. Okay, and just to be clear, I'm not going around my dog. I have groomer friends that give me husband and the love that I had.
Losing this uniqueness. Like you see the same building in New York and you come here and say you can see the same. Then we found a Yellowstone also that I took pictures to and then that Yellowstone just as.
So this whole site add to the structure. Take mud that we use. We put mud in the mat. It's like mason. You have this on top and then properties or regulation, temperature regulation. So that's why it fills it. And when it shows up here, as when sometimes it still continues to breathe, even when another is.
I'm a co-star, the diva.
People don't understand it, and they lack of understand that the way you're using it. For us, it's obvious that that you're going to live in. It's about the buildings, the earthquakes. It's a lot of the building. You need to sing.
It's our venture, plus across the country, and itself is quite high. Put it from factory to the dealer to then to mechanic, then to homes and the health impacts that it had.
So when we look at treatments that were very often used was construction materials. It's good for you. People bring women masons on construction sites.
The workers from the village, they turned up here. They were just a woman from the disconnect. But as we got to other taste, I think my intention, I don't know, or we bonded. I genuinely care for them, and I think they care for me.
ಆದರೆ ನಾವು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಹೆಂಗಸರು ಮಾತ್ರ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು. ಇದು ನಿಮಗೆ ಹೆಂಗ್ ಕಾಣುತ್ತೆ ಇದು?
ಪರವಾಗಿಲ್ಲ, ಗಂಡಸರು ಕಣ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗೇ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಲ್ಲ ಮೇಡಮ್.
ನೀವು ನಿಮ್ಮನ್ನ ಮೇಸ್ತ್ರಿ ಅಂತ ಎನ್ಸ್ಕೋತೀರಾ? ನೀವು ಮೇಸ್ತ್ರಿನ ಇವಾಗ?
ಮೇಡಮ್ ಇನ್ನು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದ ಮೇಕ ಗಾರೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಅಂದ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ ಮೇಸ್ತ್ರಿನೇ. ಇನ್ನು ನೀವು ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಟ್ಟಾಗ ನಾವು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ತಾನೇ ನಮ್ಮನ್ನು ಮೇಸ್ತ್ರಿ ಅಂತ ನೀವು ಕರೆಯೋದು. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಮೇಸ್ತ್ರಿನೇ.
To get them to understand that we are trying out, it's all women. We want to try this out to see if it works. They kept saying, once we start the main construction, then we'll get the men here. So I told them, okay, we will start the work, and not to come and tell me I can this man do the night.
Related to gender, automatically it becomes like a kind of thing, which profession. Why more women in our architecture firms? Let's have more women on. I past that age where someone says in a certain way, but of course that there is a silent. So to question that and to get people to that.
Outside, people very modern, bringing both equal opportunities. But I don't know, I'm a different generation, so they have my support. I do, that Mason Singh does. Really accept that. I think they're still really worried that I'm unmarried and raped by the baby. I find, as you can feel the vibe and the energy is very different. Almost as a philosophy, and you use even the pace kind of looks.
I would say that we have almost statuses. Practice and lowest possible impact or have used. All of them are was cut in the construction of this house.
We started up in 2018, so we were quite young. It's a leap of faith. It's about enough to build a house.
Now we are at our and medicinal.
Interesting to know that both we can work. People think different, have very more of cultural heritage and the importance of it in climate action.
Really exciting is that more is into an ethic over other kind of entering that into policy and can definitely be used as a mitigate effective tool to mitigate climate change.
It's tempting to say I'm going to get rid of my pain by going on a shopping spree. And I did it. It didn't help. We can shut ourselves off and harden ourselves. But there's a beauty to keeping it all open, and the earth inspires that. And I would definitely tell people to try it. It may sound challenging. Try it at some small level. You will see that's healing, and take the plunge.
As women, it does, it does create a buzz. So the fact that there's no expectation is going to do
Too much. No matter where your profession is, home.